Hillman sets a screen, rolls to the basket. Gray.
Welcome back to Clark USA fans. Here comes Clark, pushing the tempo, slicing through the defense, seeing plays before they even fully develop. That's the gift she brings every single night. Pace that bends the defense and passes that break it. A perfect thread to Boston in stride. A flash of brilliance that feels effortless. But beneath the beauty of the game, beneath the highlights and sold-out arenas, there's another force at work in professional basketball, and it isn't speed, strength, or shooting range. It's silence. The silence of a whistle that never blows. The silence that follows contact everyone saw but no one officially acknowledged. And when that silence surrounds the biggest rising star in the league, it stops being coincidence and starts becoming a question. When Caitlin Clark entered the WNBA, she didn't just join a roster. She altered the gravitational pull of the entire sport. Arenas filled to capacity. Television ratings surged to historic levels. Casual fans who had never tuned into women's basketball suddenly rearranged their schedules to watch number 22. Jerseys sold out. Road crowds booed her, cheered her, obsessed over her. She became a phenomenon in real time. But with that phenomenon came something heavier than double teams and defensive pressure. It came with scrutiny, resentment in some corners, heightened physicality, and moments that forced fans to rewind their screens and ask, did that really just go uncalled? If you slow the footage down, if you stack play after play on top of each other, a pattern begins to form. Arms grabbing without whistles. Bodies colliding without consequences. Hits that would ordinarily earn automatic fouls simply blending into the background noise of competition. And the most unsettling part? It didn't feel random. It felt directional. This wasn't about one referee having a bad angle or one crew missing a call. It felt systemic. It felt like the rules, at least in certain moments, applied differently. September 22nd was supposed to be celebration. Playoff basketball. Bright lights. National cameras. The Indiana Fever, powered by their transcendent rookie, had clawed their way into the postseason spotlight. Across from them stood the Connecticut Sun, a franchise built on toughness, playoff experience, and a roster comfortable turning games into wrestling matches, if necessary. Youth versus experience. Flash versus force. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The league itself had just announced record-breaking viewership numbers, the most-watched season in its history. Millions were watching. And then it happened. Just minutes into the contest, with the game still settling into rhythm, Clark tried to cut through traffic. Dejounte Carrington lunged toward her.
The defense doesn't sleep. Williams with a steal.
On paper, it was a defensive play. In reality, her hand connected flush with Clark's face, fingers striking directly into the eye. The impact was immediate. Clark staggered. She blinked rapidly, disoriented, trying to clear her vision as the arena collectively inhaled. 20,000 fans froze in expectation. A hit to the face is not a gray area in basketball. It is not subjective. From youth leagues to professional arenas, contact to the face draws a whistle, often a flagrant review, because player safety isn't optional. The whistle never came. Play continued. Clark, visibly shaken, tried to carry on. Cameras zoomed in on the swelling forming around her eye. Commentators hesitated, then carefully questioned what everyone at home was already shouting. The play was briefly reviewed, but the tone quickly shifted to no intent. Intent doesn't erase impact. And impact was obvious. She finished the half shooting 1 for 9. A player who had lit up scoreboards all season suddenly looked out of rhythm after absorbing a blow that would have sidelined many others. Social media erupted. Fans called it one of the worst officiated games they had ever seen. Parents watching with daughters who idolized Clark struggled to explain how such a moment could simply pass without accountability. What lesson does that teach? That excellence invites exemption from protection? That being the face of the league means enduring punishment silently? What makes that night linger is this. It didn't feel isolated. It felt like an introduction. Throughout that playoff game, Clark absorbed contact that would routinely send other stars to the free throw line. Grabs on cuts. Holds off screens. Body checks after passes. The commentators, usually measured to the point of neutrality, began pointing out the imbalance. The physicality wasn't just tough defense. It was something edging toward unchecked aggression. And then came August 28th, another showdown with Connecticut. If a theme was forming, it sharpened that night. Alyssa Thomas, a veteran known for relentless physical play, took the matchup personally. There's nothing wrong with hard basketball. The sport thrives on it. But what unfolded crossed a line between competition and collision.
Clock to one. Lloyd. Oh, yeah! To Lloyd.
Thomas drove her shoulder through Clark with a force that sent the rookie crashing to the hardwood. The sound of the impact echoed. Viewers winced instinctively. It wasn't a play on the ball. It wasn't a contested shot. It was a bulldozer moment disguised as defense. Again, the response felt muted.
No imiditos que lascen.
No clear statement that the boundary had been crossed.
Just play on.
When the league's most visible star repeatedly hits the floor without whistles, the conversation grows louder. Not because fans want favoritism, but because they want consistency. The same rulebook, the same standard, the same protection afforded to every athlete stepping onto that court. Clark never publicly lashed out. She got up. She kept playing. She kept passing lasers through tight windows and pulling up from impossible range. She kept drawing ratings the league had never seen before. But each silent whistle added another layer to the narrative. Was this simply playoff intensity? Or was it something more complex? The growing pains of a league adjusting to sudden global attention? When one player's presence shifts economics, ticket sales, television deals, and national headlines, does the environment shift around her too? The numbers don't lie. Attendance spiked wherever Indiana traveled. Broadcast partners highlighted her matchups weeks in advance. Debate shows dissected her every move. With that level of spotlight comes pressure, not just on players, but on officials, on veterans defending their territory, on an entire ecosystem adapting to unprecedented scrutiny. And in high-pressure environments, small decisions carry enormous weight. Each no-call becomes magnified. Each hit lingers longer. Each moment feeds a growing belief among fans that something isn't balanced. Basketball, at its core, is about rhythm,
Flow.
confidence. A scorer sees one shot fall, and the rim widens. But what happens when that rhythm is repeatedly interrupted by contact that never earns acknowledgement? When driving the lane means absorbing hits that go statistically invisible, over time, it alters how a player attacks. It alters spacing. It alters aggression. It changes outcomes. This isn't about portraying Clark as untouchable. It's about asking why visible infractions often dissolved into background noise when they involved her. Why identical contact on other stars sometimes resulted in free throws while she fought through it unaided. And why, in the moments when the world was watching most closely, the silence felt loudest. The playoff loss to Connecticut will show up in the standings as just that, a loss. But the footage lives beyond the box score. Replayed, debated, slowed frame by frame. Analysts arguing intent versus effect. Fans dissecting angles. Former players weighing in about physicality standards. The conversation extended beyond one series and into a broader question about fairness, adaptation, and the responsibility that comes with a sport entering a new era of attention. Because make no mistake, this is a new era. The record viewership numbers weren't coincidence. The surge in young girls wearing Clark jerseys isn't coincidence. The sold-out road arenas aren't coincidence. The league is expanding its reach, its revenue streams, its cultural footprint. And when that kind of transformation happens quickly, friction follows. So here's the question that refuses to fade. When the whistle stays silent in moments that seem obvious, who truly benefits? Does unchecked physicality level the playing field? Or does it distort it? Is it about proving toughness?
Protecting tradition?
Resisting change? Or simply human error repeated under extraordinary pressure? Clark continues forward regardless. She pushes pace. She threads impossible passes. She absorbs hits and rises again. The bruises fade. The highlights remain. But the debate surrounding those silent whistles lingers, because fairness isn't a luxury in professional sports. It's the foundation. And as the Fever look toward future postseasons, as the Sun and other contenders prepare for the battles ahead, the spotlight only grows brighter. Millions more watching, millions more analyzing. In that glare, silence becomes impossible to ignore. The most powerful force in basketball isn't speed. It isn't strength. It isn't even skill. It's accountability, or the absence of it. And until every player on that court is protected by the same unwavering standard, the question will echo with every unblown whistle. If the rules don't apply equally, what game are we really watching?
She can't believe it!
The broadcast replayed the collision from every conceivable angle, and no matter how you sliced the footage, slowed it down, or zoomed it in, the violence of the moment refused to soften. Alyssa Thomas didn't simply contest a play. She lowered her shoulder, dropped her center of gravity, and drove forward with the kind of force you expect on a football field, not a hardwood court. The ball had already swung away, the shot drifting off the mark, but her momentum didn't stop. She barreled straight through Caitlin Clark as though separating her from balance, or consciousness, was part of the defensive scheme. Clark's body snapped backward before crashing to the floor, the sound of impact cutting through the arena's roar. It was the kind of hit that makes even neutral viewers wince instinctively. Analysts paused mid-sentence. Fans threw their hands up in disbelief. In real time, it looked excessive. In slow motion, it looked indefensible. The expected call was obvious. A flagrant foul, at minimum a personal foul accompanied by a stern warning that physicality has limits. Instead, the officials assessed a common foul, a routine infraction, the same penalty you'd see for brushing someone's wrist on a jump shot, the same classification given to accidental bumps away from the ball. The dissonance between what viewers witnessed and how it was categorized created immediate outrage. How does a collision that echoes like a car crash get reduced to paperwork? How does force that sends a player sprawling become ordinary? Fans didn't hesitate to voice their anger. Social media ignited. Words like cheap shot and dangerous trended alongside highlight clips. Observers compared it to incidents in the men's game that have resulted in suspensions and fines. But beneath the fury was a deeper concern. This wasn't just about a single blown call. It was about cumulative risk. The WNBA had found itself propelled into unprecedented visibility largely because of Clark's arrival. Ratings soared. Arenas filled. Merchandise flew off shelves. And yet, the league's most marketable and scrutinized player appeared to be absorbing contact at a level that bordered on reckless, without the consistent protection typically afforded to franchise cornerstones. 10 days earlier, on August 18th, another moment had already set off alarms. The opponent that night was the Seattle Storm. The game was winding down, tension lingering in the air. Clark stood near the bench during a timeout, feeding off the home crowd's energy, a competitor locked in, engaging, alive in the moment. Out of nowhere, Skylar Diggins-Smith approached from behind and delivered a shoulder check that shoved Clark aside. It wasn't a basketball play. The ball wasn't even in play.
Of X Factor's Ariel Atkins off balance.
It was a dead ball stoppage, a pause in competition. And yet the contact was deliberate and visible to everyone in the building. The crowd's reaction was immediate.
Shock.
Then boos cascading from every corner of the arena. Viewers at home replayed the moment in disbelief. Surely there would be a technical. Surely some acknowledgement that a veteran had initiated unnecessary physical contact against a rookie during a timeout. There was none.
No whistle.
No warning. No statement from the officials indicating they had even registered what happened. Diggins-Smith walked away without consequence, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any foul call. Debate exploded across sports talk platforms. Was this veteran intimidation? Was it frustration boiling over? Or had an unspoken permission structure developed? One where certain players felt emboldened to test Clark's limits because enforcement appeared inconsistent? The optics were troubling enough. The timing made it worse. Because later in that very same game, the contrast became impossible to ignore. With 7:14 remaining in the third quarter, Clark missed a three-pointer. Frustrated, Not at an opponent, not at an official, but at herself. She lightly tapped the padding on the stanchion beneath the hoop. A harmless release of competitive annoyance. The referee's whistle cut through the arena almost instantly. Technical foul. Let that sink in. A veteran shoulder checks Clark from behind during a dead ball, no call. Clark taps the padding in frustration at her own miss. Technical for being disrespectful to the game. The arena buzzed with disbelief. Commentators struggled to contextualize it. Fans replayed both moments side by side, the disparity glaring. If you were searching for evidence of inconsistency, you didn't need spreadsheets or advanced analytics. You needed only that single sequence. Afterward, Clark addressed the call with measured disbelief. She explained she was mad at herself, that she tapped the padding, that she was told it was disrespectful. Her tone wasn't explosive, it was weary. The kind of restrained confusion that suggests she'd grown accustomed to navigating officiating that didn't always align with expectation. Expressing frustration at personal performance, a universal athlete reflex, was deemed punishable. But overt physical aggression during stoppage? Apparently negotiable. Yet here is where Clark's resilience revealed itself most clearly. Instead of unraveling, she recalibrated. She poured the slight into performance. She finished that night with 23 points, channeling irritation into precision. The Indiana Fever surged to a commanding 17-point victory. Her post-game comments even carried a trace of irony, suggesting the technical foul had fueled her intensity. It was a masterclass in emotional alchemy, turning perceived injustice into competitive fire. But the pattern refused to fade.
The last two games of this regular season is Citron takes and makes from deep.
September 11th brought another nationally televised showdown, this time against the powerhouse Las Vegas Aces. Gainbridge Fieldhouse vibrated with anticipation. The game had the texture of a playoff preview, every possession contested, every drive contested with force. Late in the fourth quarter, with tension peaking, Jackie Young reached in, and her hand struck Clark squarely in the face. The contact snapped Clark's head backward. She stumbled, momentarily shaken. The crowd gasped in unison. Surely this time, after weeks of scrutiny and debate, the response would escalate. Face contact has historically triggered reviews. Flagrantry is measured not just by intent, but by impact and location. A hit to the face in crunch time of a nationally televised contest seemed textbook. The call? Common foul. Again. The boos rained down immediately. Social media erupted before the free throws were even attempted. The same questions echoed with renewed urgency. Why isn't she being protected? Why do identical plays seem to yield different consequences, depending on who absorbs the contact? How many times can visible force be reclassified as routine before credibility erodes? This wasn't about demanding superstar favoritism. It was about baseline consistency. About ensuring that rules governing safety and sportsmanship apply evenly, whether the player is a decorated veteran or a record-shattering rookie. In professional sports, perception matters almost as much as reality. And the growing perception was that Clark was navigating a physical threshold that others did not have to cross. The league's explosion in popularity added another layer of complexity. Clark's presence had shifted the economic and cultural landscape almost overnight. Television ratings reached historic highs. Road arenas reported sellouts when Indiana came to town. Young fans flooded social media with highlight compilations and jersey photos. With that surge came heightened emotions, defenders eager to prove toughness, veterans guarding legacy, officials operating under unprecedented scrutiny. Pressure can distort judgment. It can also expose patterns that previously went unnoticed. Each silent whistle fed a narrative that refused to quiet down. Each replay intensified debate about whether enforcement standards had subtly shifted. Was the increased physicality strategic, an attempt to welcome a rookie to professional reality? Or had the line between hard defense and hazardous play blurred beyond recognition? Clark's response remained consistent. Get up, adjust, attack again. She didn't lobby demonstratively for calls.
KT even put it in.
She didn't publicly accuse. She kept pushing pace, delivering cross-court lasers and launching from distances that redefined shot selection norms. Her composure in the face of repeated contact only amplified the conversation. The more she endured without complaint, the louder fans complained on her behalf. Because ultimately, this isn't solely about one player. It's about the integrity of competition. When a league experiences rapid growth, maintaining trust becomes paramount. Trust that games are adjudicated fairly. Trust that player safety is non-negotiable. Trust that emotions, whether from veterans, rookies, or officials, don't tilt enforcement scales. The collisions of August and September now live beyond their box scores. They've become case studies in sports talk segments and online forums. Clips circulate alongside freeze frames and slowed-down analyses. Each replay invites the same uneasy reflection. Was that truly common? Clark's rookie season was already historic in terms of impact. But intertwined with the assists, the logo threes, and the packed arenas is another storyline, one about adaptation, resilience, and the ongoing negotiation between physical intensity and player protection. A storyline that raises uncomfortable but necessary questions about how emerging icons are officiated under the brightest lights. And as the season marches forward, the spotlight only intensifies. More viewers, more scrutiny, more accountability demanded by fans who believe that fairness is the bedrock of sport. Because while basketball thrives on contact and competitiveness, it also depends on boundaries. Without consistent enforcement, physicality risks mutating into something else entirely. The most telling detail in all of this may not be the collisions themselves, but Clark's refusal to fracture under them. Technical foul? She scores 23. Shoulder check? She resets and attacks. Face contact? She steadies and keeps orchestrating. Her resilience has become as much a defining trait as her shooting range. Still, the question lingers, persistent and unresolved. If hits to the face become common, if shoulder checks during dead balls vanish without acknowledgement, if self-directed frustration earns harsher penalties than outward aggression, what message does that send about priorities? Fans aren't asking for favoritism. They're asking for equilibrium. Because in a league surging toward new heights, credibility must rise alongside it. And every silent whistle, every downgraded infraction, every technical that feels misaligned, they all shape the narrative of this era. Clark keeps playing. The arenas keep filling. The cameras keep rolling. But the echoes of those moments, the shoulder, the shove, the face contact, the technical, continue reverberating. And until the standard feels undeniably even, one question will keep surfacing from living rooms, arenas, and timelines across the country. Why isn't she being protected?
At his first three of the game.
How much is one player supposed to absorb before intervention becomes unavoidable? How many collisions, how many drives into traffic, how many hits to the arms, shoulders, and face must occur before a whistle finally acknowledges what everyone else can see? That question didn't suddenly appear in September under bright playoff lights. It had been building quietly, steadily, possession by possession, from the earliest weeks of the season. To understand why so many fans began to sense a troubling pattern, you have to rewind to May 22nd, when the Indiana Fever were locked in a tense first-half battle with the Seattle Storm. The score was tight, the energy sharp, and every trip down the floor felt consequential. In that moment, Caitlin Clark did what she has always done throughout her basketball life. She attacked. She drove hard toward the rim, accelerating into a collapsing defense with the intent of swinging momentum before halftime. The first contact came at the perimeter, a bump that shifted her balance. She powered through it. The second hit arrived as she split two defenders near the free throw line, arms brushing, bodies colliding. Still no whistle. She gathered and elevated toward the basket, only to meet a third collision midair, the kind that visibly alters a shot's trajectory. 3 distinct moments of physicality on a single possession. At almost any level of organized basketball, any one of those would justify a foul call. Instead, the arena heard nothing. No sharp blast of a whistle. No raised fist signaling contact. Just the sound of the ball ricocheting away and a wave of disbelief spreading from the lower bowl to the rafters. The The frustration that followed wasn't explosive at first. It was confused. "How is that not a foul?" became less a protest and more a genuine inquiry. On the sideline, head coach Christie Side struggled to conceal her exasperation. Her post-game remarks weren't theatrical. They carried the tone of someone exhausted by repetition. She didn't demand special treatment. She didn't argue for favoritism. She simply asked for the baseline standard every professional athlete expects: fairness. Consistency. The same protection extended to everyone else on the floor. That moment on May 22nd did not exist in isolation. It slid seamlessly into what was becoming an uncomfortable through line. Less than a month later, on June 19th, Indiana faced the Washington Mystics in a nationally spotlighted contest heavy with playoff implications. Once again, Clark attacked the paint. Once again, defenders converged with force. Stephanie Dolson stepped into her path, made visible contact, and dislodged the ball. On playground courts, in college arenas, in NBA arenas, that play almost universally produces a whistle. Here, it produced silence. Commentators tried to parse it in real time, referencing hand checks and push-offs, but the confusion outweighed the clarity. Fans who had already cataloged prior no calls watched another seemingly textbook foul dissolve into nothing. By then, the commentary on social media had shifted from anger to biting sarcasm. An elbow to the face might go unpunished, critics noted, yet a minor gesture of frustration could draw immediate discipline. That perception, fair or not, gained traction because of contrast. Inconsistency becomes glaring when two similar situations generate wildly different responses. And as June unfolded, those contrasts multiplied. To trace the origins of this unease, however, you must step back even further to May 18th, one of Clark's earliest professional tests against the veteran-heavy New York Liberty. The Liberty carried championship expectations and a physical identity anchored by experience. Clark was still calibrating to the pro game's speed and strength, but her confidence remained intact. Midway through that contest, Breanna Stewart set a firm screen that sent Clark stumbling. The contact was unmistakable. The officials allowed play to continue. On its own, it might have seemed routine, hard basketball. Yet in hindsight, it felt like an early signpost, another moment where visible force passed without acknowledgement. 2 days later, on May 20th, the concern escalated beyond fairness into safety during a matchup with a Connecticut Sun. Clark attempted to navigate another heavy screen. This time, her ankle rolled awkwardly beneath her. She crumpled to the hardwood, clutching her leg as play flowed on around her. In most professional settings, visible injury halts action. Not because of star status, but because player welfare is foundational. Yet the whistle again failed to intervene.
Over 2K in her career. Then a statement.
The image of Clark on the floor while the game continued lingered uncomfortably. If a player visibly hurt does not stop play, observers wondered, what threshold must be crossed? Critically, Clark rose. She always seems to. She tested her ankle, fought through discomfort, and resumed competition. Her resilience is undeniable. But resilience should never be misinterpreted as justification for silence. Athletes shouldn't have to prove their toughness to receive basic protection. Officials exist precisely to prevent that burden from falling on competitors themselves. When you string these dates together, May 18th, May 20th, May 22nd, June 19th, the narrative shifts from isolated oversight to unsettling repetition. Each individual moment might be defensible as human error, but collectively, they sketch a line too straight to dismiss. And the physical toll is only part of the equation. Equally concerning is the message transmitted to everyone watching: teammates, opponents, aspiring young athletes. Leagues are ecosystems built on trust. Trust that competition will be adjudicated consistently. Trust that safety protocols apply evenly. Trust that emotional reactions are evaluated with proportion. When visible contact repeatedly goes uncalled, that trust begins to erode, not in the athlete absorbing it, but in the framework meant to govern the game. For Clark, whose arrival into the WNBA ushered in record-breaking ratings and sold-out arenas, the scrutiny intensified. Every missed whistle was amplified by replay angles, viral clips, and debate segments dissecting officiating standards. By late June, the central question had evolved. It was no longer, was that one a foul? It became, how many of these are we going to see before acknowledgement replaces silence? 10 separate incidents were more than enough to reveal a trend. What made it unsettling wasn't chaos, it was consistency. Silence repeated often enough begins to resemble policy. And when that silence surrounds the league's most visible player, the optics shift dramatically. Clark's reaction throughout has been strikingly consistent. She attacks again. She continues to push pace, to drive into traffic, to fire from distances that stretch defenses thin. She doesn't publicly rage. She doesn't withdraw. She produces. But responsibility for enforcement never belonged to her. It rests with officials, with governance structures, with the systems that pledge competitive integrity. What unsettles fans most is the contrast. A player can take repeated body blows without a whistle, yet a comparatively minor display of self-directed frustration might be deemed unsportsmanlike. That discrepancy fuels narratives of imbalance. It prompts rhetorical questions that refuse to fade. Who decides where the line lies? Why does it appear movable? And why does it seem to shift most noticeably in moments involving Clark? The implications extend beyond a single season. Young players watching closely absorb lessons about what professional success costs. If obvious contact draws no response, what incentive exists to moderate physicality? If injuries don't immediately halt play, what signal is sent about duty of care? Standards, once perceived as uneven, become difficult to restore without decisive recalibration. Clark continues to show up, game after game, absorbing contact and delivering brilliance. The arenas remain full. The cameras continue rolling. Yet beneath the spectacle, the unresolved tension lingers. Leagues are defined not only by the stars they elevate, but by the standards they enforce when enforcement becomes uncomfortable. Growth demands credibility. Credibility demands consistency. As another tip-off approaches and the broadcast graphics flash across screens nationwide, viewers will once again watch closely. Not just for logo threes or no-look passes, but for the subtler details, the body checks, the drives into contact, the whistles that follow or fail to follow. Because this story doesn't end with a single call, a single game, or even a single player. It ends only when accountability becomes as consistent as the competition itself. So the question remains, and it grows louder with each unacknowledged collision. If silence continues deciding pivotal moments, who exactly is the game being officiated for? And who, in that silence, is left exposed?